For all over the world, like the old nights of Guinness of the 80s and 90s, it's like things have changed, and there are things that newer perverts don't necessarily know that would be interesting and informative for them. So go on, Graham, how did you get started?
Pure flip. Simple as that. I had a girlfriend back in early 90s, and we discovered we had interest in playing certain types of games, shall we say. And I picked up some catalogues, and in those days, a plain leather collar, nothing fancy, 3 inches wide, was 30 quid. In 1990s money, I looked it up. In modern terms, that's like £70 for a single plain leather collar, nothing fancy. So I thought, that's ridiculous. So I looked at the cost of leather and buckles and made some stuff up for us. And I realised people were making like 500% markup on this stuff. And I thought, Jesus. So I made some stuff up, and then I dropped into a local adult shop down in Portsmouth, where I come from. I said, look, I can make this stuff. You interested? I said, good. Okay, we'll take 3 lots of that, give it a try. A few weeks later, he phones me up and says, we want another lot of that. By the way, we have 3 other shops in Southampton. They want it as well. Ka-ching! So I started supplying them. Then there was another shop I supplied. I mentioned I've got a sewing machine that would stitch leather. So I said, can you do leather skirts? No, I do this sort of stuff. What did you get? Oh, do you go to the Whiplash Market? What's the Whiplash Market? Oh, there's this market every month up in London. We're going next week. One left. Okay, why not?
Who was that?
Her name. Oh,
Was it Joe Fox?
no, Fiona, her name was. No, anyway, yeah, so went up, had a look around, and thought, worth a shot. So I talked to, it was Heather, Nick, and Robin at the time, wasn't it? Yeah. So I said, yeah, can I get stalled? Yeah, come along next month. Brought some stuff along. Gee, made some money. Hey, I was unemployed at the time, so I started doing this. And that's literally how the business got started. And then I started making more contacts. I started, doing catalogues and all the rest of it. And that was 30 years ago. And it was like, I never sat down and thought, making a bondage gear business, that'd be an idea. Go to business, go to the bank and say, you got a business plan? What's all that?
Okay, tell us about the changes over the last 30 years in the markets.
Well, it started off with the Whiplash Market that was at Adrenaline Village. Now, there was one before it, wasn't it? Yeah.
Adrenaline Village, if you don't
sorry. How before that? No, it was the Art Depot first, wasn't it?
Yes.
The Art Depot was first. But there was one before that, wasn't there? That you did, I think, that I didn't.
Reflex. There's a company in Putney called Reflex, which they also used to run Whiplash fetish copyrights in, which stopped after the films came in one night with dogs and truncheons and shut the fucker down, and then there was a court case and we won. Whiplash 96.
Yeah. Hang on, that was Jennifer. Was it Wilson or was it Church? Church, I think it was. The judge basically said to the jury, you have to decide whether this sort of behaviour is acceptable in this day and age. And the jury said, yes. And there hasn't been a raid on the club since, because basically...
Anyway, digressing slightly, but that the market then moved to the Arts Depot, and then it moved to Adrenaline Village, which is, I think it's a QVC.
Basically a warehouse built of breeze blocks, and it's absolutely freezing, it's filthy.
Yeah, dirty aircraft hangar.
Yeah, exactly.
It's cold.
Then there's been Smithy's was nice. Yeah, although it was small, bloody hot sometimes. There was a room that had basically a parachute draped over the top of it and trapped all the heat in it, like sauna in there. There was because Whiplash closed, the LFF took over, then there was Fantasy SM Market, Camden Town Hall, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. There was also Camberwell New Road. That was underneath the railway arches, which was another delightful venue.
The toilets made you should revisit your Glastonbury experience. So you need the platform souls.
Yes, not very nice. And there was the roller disco at 9 Elms Lane, which actually was a lovely venue, but of course then they started redeveloping around there. Yeah, unfortunately, but I heard the owners of the freehold got offered a 7-figure sum do you want to roll a disco or do you want, yeah, exactly, take the money and run. Now it's, let me be blocks of flats or whatever. But yeah, it's changed over the years. I mean, certainly now with the LAN, for instance, I mean, the number of people that we get coming along to this, you know, it used to be a case of sort of 100, 200 people turning up was a really busy day. Now we're talking 500 plus, and it's like getting rushed off our feet. And today's been absolutely manic, which has been good for 30th birthday for me. Lots of sales, great.
Are many of you first timers?
Yep.
Wow!
Wow.
Welcome. We have to see you again.
There are a few of us old stagers around.
Yeah. Some of the
Few of us can't we?
As I was coming in, you were talking about psychogeography of London, Scabberous up brick arches. I was thinking about the meatpacking districts in Manhattan.
Mhm.
And one thing that I've seen change when I've been coming to events like this is, in its roots in America, BDSM quite dodgy, connected with the mafia, organised crime. The lovely thing about this is it's safe. It feels safe, which may have kind of taken some of the thrills and spills out of it, but
Well, the only issue I could ever remember, I've been doing these markets. November '97 was the first market I ever did. The only one I can actually remember was it wasn't even someone who was actually in the kink scene. It was at Schiller Beers, and they were showing football in 2008, I think it was. And some big bloke come in with his England shirt, wanting to watch the football, and started making not very nice comments towards some of the young ladies there. And basically, the police came in, grabbed him out. That's literally the only issue I can think of in, what is it now? I don't know, 25 years of doing markets? Something like that?
Anyone gets the odd minor petty dispute, which one person did once try to settle with the spray.
Oh, God.
They were,
I remember that one, actually, yeah.
yeah. They,
Yeah.
yeah, well, anyway, they, actually both parties involved, and that's what we're now deceased. So,
Yeah. I mean, literally, you know, you don't get that sort of problem here. Everyone's here to have a good time. That's what's so wonderful about the scene, even, you know, in the early days. So, yeah.
Anyway, you do affordable leather products. What are your best-selling things?
My current actual, probably most popular best-selling item is a giant strap-on dildo harness. We are talking toys that are like yay much round and yay much long. These things weigh 2-3 kilos, so you need a seriously sturdy harness. And there's a yeah, a lot of lube, obviously. There's someone called Kinky Steph. If you look up online, your eyes will be opened. And certain other parts of your anatomy will also. Kinky Steph, basically, she ordered one of these. She wanted one made up as a custom item. Come on, Jonathan. This gentleman here, Jonathan, is one of the other old stagers. He's been around almost as long as myself and Janet.
Yes! Speak up, young man!
Thanks,
Right.
This was also the guy who went on Britain's Got Talent and did Spanky Bottom Shakespeare.
It's true.
It's true.
One of the many low points in my career.
So on stage, Britain's Got Talent, the young lady across his knee, spanking her and reciting Shakespeare. Anyway, back to the giant strap-on harness. Yes, that is, you know, basically the most popular thing because very few people are making toys like this. For stuff I sell here, I would say the suede loop tail floggers I do are always very popular, and the leather rose tip cat o' nine tails are just so beautiful. People, so someone once said, I want to buy one. I don't want to use it. Just put it on the wall and look at it.
Sorry, I have to keep scanning my phone to make it. What would you say are the biggest changes you've seen in 30 years?
Interesting you should mention that. I was doing some tidying up a little while ago, and I found this. This was the first catalogue I ever did. These photographs were taken in my bedsit that I lived in at the time. They were developed in my bedsit and then printed by a guy who had a printing press in his garage. we'll pass it around and the glass through it. I mean, that
Simple but effective.
the date on that is 1994. Now this one is the last catalogue that I did. Much better production values, 2006. That's 12 years between that catalogue and this catalogue. After this one, I didn't do a printed catalogue because the internet had taken over and it simply was not financially viable. I'm going to pass that one on as well. You can see, the old one doesn't even have prices in them because there was a separate price list for it. But yeah, simply now when I started this, there was the old Fido.net dial-up bulletin boards, which probably most of you haven't even heard of, don't know what a dial-up modem is. You know,
That's actually how I met you, because we
Fido.net,
discussed
yeah,
each other
common
on
room.
Fido.net, and then you showed up at Whitbus before you started training. Like, oh, you're Graham.
yeah.
Hmm.
So when I started, we had no idea about things like safe words. There were a few contact magazines. I mean, you wrote the Forum magazine, didn't you? If you knew people, you could maybe get into a fetish party. But it wasn't until, I mean, when I was playing with my girlfriend at the time, and I was spanking her, and she went, oh, sorry, stop, don't you dare! Because we didn't know safe words. And then there was a late night documentary on Channel 4. I think it was Mistress Scarlet from America. Anyway, she said she got her slaves to say green. And she thought, oh, that's an idea, isn't it? Because then you know the difference between no, stop, mercy, meaning actually please keep going, and green meaning stop. But this information just wasn't out there. There were no books, there were no websites at the time or anything like that.
All the book stuff really kicked off in the mid to late 90s when Green Press got going.
Yeah.
The Ethical Slark, the Topping Book, the Bottoming Book,
Yeah.
and various other things like that.
Jay Wiseman's SM101,
Yeah.
Screw the Roses, Send Me the Thorns.
All
you know.
late 90s. I mean, we had Forum magazine, which was a top shelf porn magazine, but of all magazines, Forum was I wouldn't say exactly respectful, because the informative one.
Yeah.
We would run a lot of articles on how to do different kinky things, and we had a massive readers' letters section, which was not all made up. Most of the other letters in the magazines, that company published, were all made up. I know this because I made quite a lot of them myself.
No, so it isn't so.
Forum never. No, the volume of stuff we got was more than enough.
I remember you once saying you had people writing and saying, how extreme can I make this up to actually get them to still reply to it?
That is a set of stories for another time. If you want to come upstairs afterwards and ask me about them, you're welcome to. But, we're actually talking about Graham's experiences. Good and bad in the kink community over the last 30 years.
Well, when I started, that was around the time, again, probably most of the young people here haven't even ever heard of Operation Spanner. Operation Spanner was the very late 80s, early 90s. The police found a video of some gay men doing some fairly extreme kink, shall we say.
Involving scrotums, nails, and planks of wood.
Yeah.
So nobody needed anything more than a plaster and a dab of PCP.
But
Nobody was.
they honestly thought they had actually found a genuine snuff movie they'd been looking out for ages for, which was completely mythical, because they couldn't believe that anything would happen to the people and not be killed at the end of it. And actually they found all these people alive and well saying, yes, fine, we consented to all this. And then we had the ridiculous ruling from the House of Lords that said you could not consent to an assault on yourself. But hang on, assault is done to you without your consent, but you can't consent to having done something to. It didn't make sense. It went to the European Court of Human Rights, and unfortunately that didn't go too well because there was a Belgian judge, Petey, who basically said, all this sort of stuff on homosexuality leads to child abuse and blah blah blah. So they threw it out, and that's put a little bit of a kink, shall I say, in the kink community, because things people were doing quite happily to each other, you could literally be taken to court for, even if there was no complainant. Even if I did something to you, you did something to me, the court would say this is an offence, even if there is no complainant. you know,
Quick interjection.
Mhm.
The way it was stricken from the record and finally blown up and put on the court entirely was when they pointed out that if they banned this kind of thing, they would also have to ban boxing and ban tattooing.
that lovely line in the film Preaching to the Perverted, where the face magistrate, and he's talking about boxing, says, manly sports are excluded. So he says it.
I've heard chapter and verse about this from the people at Liberty, because Liberty got
Yes.
stuck in all this.
Mm.
So it's even worse. The whole thing was a setup. So the Vice Squad planted, it was one of these spy cop situations. They planted a copper with this. I've met the Spanish guys. I don't know if anyone here is met them. Most delightful gentlemen.
Yeah.
Really most gentle, kind. I just love it. Lovely afternoon. But yeah, complete setup. Guy bought them a camera.
Oh,
And then just
okay.
went, oh, well, why don't we do this tonight? Like, I'll get the hammer.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Because there was also then the Jane Longhurst case, where erotic asphyxiation was happening. And unfortunately, it went wrong, and the young lady died. And then her mother, who was basically a political campaigner, got what we refer to often as the Dangerous Pictures Act, where a photograph of a legal act, if it looks like it's life-threatening, is a criminal offence. So it's legal to do something. You know, I could put my hands around someone's throat and go like that. If there's a photograph of it and it looks like it's life-threatening, you could be done for that. That also gives the infamous tiger porn case because they
Is that still?
technically, yes, that's still there. It hasn't really been done anything because there was the tiger porn case, so they wrapped in bestiality and necrophilia in with it as well. And there was a video found on someone's phone of a woman having sex with a tiger.
Tiger. in inverted
And it
commas.
was taken, you know, they were good prosecuted and all the rest of it, and then they actually played it with the sound turned on, and the tiger looks up at the end and goes, well, that beats selling Frosties for a living. And of course, it's a comedy, it's a joke, so it
It's
wasn't
a
a sex.
person dressed as a tiger,
Yeah.
and the police who were launching this prosecution didn't watch the fucking film before they nicked the bloke. I was like, it's a bloke in a tiger suit. This is very smart.
Yeah.
Mickey taking very smart.
But the point was, it wasn't for sexual arousal, and that's the whole point with the Dangerous Pictures Act, had to be for sexual arousal.
Don't keep shame people who like people who advertise Frosties.
I used to love Frosties when I was a kid. So yeah, I mean, those are a couple of the bad examples. But then one of the better ones that happened was another case. That was Regina versus Wilson, where Mr. Wilson had branded his initials on his wife's bum. And when she was in hospital for some checkup or whatever, they found this, and they thought this was domestic abuse. And they said, no, this is domestic abuse. This is body adornment, like tattooing, like piercings. So that undermined a lot of the previous stuff from Spanner and so on like that. It's like, you know, you can say, well, actually, you know, these marks I've given someone from a flogging or whatever, body adornment. Just because it's applied in a different way with a, you know, a whippy thing or whatever. So,
You should mention the Club Whiplash prosecution.
oh,
We
Yeah,
did,
Robert,
you wasn't here, you was
You-
late.
you was late,
You
yeah.
missed the discussion.
although I do remember Ishmael at one of the Smithies markets had a table full of stuff saying guaranteed to have been seized by the police during the Whiplash raid. It's actually saying, no, these have actually been seized by the police. So, I mean, but good things, yeah, obviously with the advent of the internet, with the advent of the clubs, with the advent of the fetish market and all the rest of it, even, okay, I have to mention it, 50 Shades of Drivel. You know, yes, it's completely rubbish. It's Twilight fan fiction that can be written as King's
Right,
story.
somebody couldn't string a sentence.
I agree.
Editor.
I run the bookstore and I write and
Yes.
edit and
But people are now at least accepting the fact that, you know, kink is a thing. It's not dangerous. It's not abusive, you know, if it's done correctly. So,
And the sale of nipple clamps went up 2,000%.
you can now say to
Yes.
people
So,
that if you say, you know, I write and sell naughty books. Oh, what sort of thing? Kind of like 50 Shades, only better.
can't
And people are like, ooh,
be worse.
because it's become something you can have a bit of a giggle about and be a bit interested in without necessarily suggesting that you eat babies and mistreat domestic pets and that you're a terrifying, dangerous human being. It's like, oh, you're into something a bit naughty.
So
Have a
it's
look
just-
on it, darling. Yeah, sorry.
No, so it's interesting. I have the same opinion on that novel movie. But what I wanted to just clarify is what is the current legal position? And also within the movie, I did read that. Within the movie, there was effectively, because it's so popular, people will try to interpret that you could actually have a contract like Mr. Gray does with his submissive.
that,
And that
okay.
would,
That-
I'm just curious your views on how you demonstrate informed
Okay,
consent.
that sort of contract has no legal standing. You can write that sort of thing, but it hasn't. I mean, the main problem is, apart from it being incredibly badly written, I mean, Christian Grey is a stalker version on Predator. He mistakes coercion for consent. And cable ties, no, just no. Okay,
Oh,
cable
no,
ties,
no,
no.
No.
All right, no other thing.
I had a problem with cable ties once some years ago. This involved pony carting. It was at an outdoor event, Pleasure Zone 98. And I had persuaded my friend who was quite new to the scene to be my pony. So he's in the, what do you call them? The
Traps.
Traps? Yeah. I'm sitting in the pony cart. He is, because we've run out of wrist cuffs, so they put cable ties around his upper arms, pulled the pony cart with, and I rather jokingly gave his backside a cut with the riding crop, which he didn't like. So he bolted, the cable ties snapped, the cart forks went down, and I went, oh, landing on my head. It was not nice.
Yeah.
It was extremely amusing for everybody else, but it wasn't very nice for me. So don't use cable ties.
For anything.
But also in answer to your question on consent, Debs did 90 minutes on that earlier today, so watch your video.
Basically, though, if you leave marks on someone that are more than trifling and transient, whatever that means, never really particularly clear.
No hickeys.
Yeah, technically, you could be done for assault. These days, unlikely, but there were issues a few years back with people trying to use the so-called rough sex defense when they've done something abusive to their partner and then saying, oh, it was consensual BDSM, which is complete bullshit.
Arseholes are always going to arsehole no matter what laws you have in place.
Yeah.
Good lawmaking takes into consideration how much of this law will save people from mistreatment and how much of it will just get under other people's feet and inconvenience people who haven't done anything unethical.
Anyway, let's
No.
move on, shall we?
Yeah. Do you want to talk about your hopes for the future, Graham?
Well, my hopes for the future and the kink scene progresses and gets more acceptable. My main worry for the future is that at the moment the American Christian right wing, who are anti-trans, anti-porn, and basically want to turn anti-abortion, and they want to
Because
turn
they're fascists.
yeah, exactly. They want to turn the world into Gilead from The Handmaid's Tale. They are the people who are convincing states in America to declare porn a public health crisis. First Amendment, no, sorry, not that, not including that bit. They're the ones that are pushing all the anti-trans people over in this country at the moment. There are a lot of people shouting very loud, but not actually very much support. They have a lot of fake sock puppets kind of on Twitter and stuff like that, so X-Twitter, whatever. That's the biggest worry. I mean, also we've got, for instance, Dame Diana Johnson MP, who's trying to get the Nordic model of sex work in this country, which basically says it's legal to sell sex, it's not legal to buy sex.
And
Which
devastation that has caused sex workers in countries where it's implemented. It puts them at far more risk than it helps them. It makes it much harder to survive as a sex worker. And it, even the original Nordic model was, to be honest, had racist roots. It was about deporting people who were doing sex work.
they've admitted now after over 20 years that it hasn't worked. But we had in Ireland they had a over 90% increase in violence against sex workers. In France, when they introduced it, 10 sex workers were murdered in a 6-month period. That's the sort of thing we have to worry about. But on the other hand, we've got a lot of kinky people who are saying, yeah, this is nonsense. Yeah, we're going to go out and do this sort of thing. We're buying the stuff off the internet. We're doing websites. We're doing workshops. We're doing clubs, and we're doing marketing.
Doing parades in the street.
That too. Yeah, absolutely.
No, I mean it's fascinating. I was curious, why isn't there a stronger counter lobby and actually a move towards decriminalization in the UK? I mean, even in terms of charities, I can't find anything to support.
How many people want to stand up and they say, oh, you're part of the pimp lobby. Oh, you're in favour of abuse. You're,
You must be a danger to children because you like weird sex.
Yes.
With consenting adults.
Yes.
What about the children?
Yeah, exactly. That is the problem. There is all this bullshit being spread by, unfortunately, certain elements of the right-wing media and all the rest of it. I mean, back in the old days, it used to be like the News of the World doing their fearless exposés of some dungeon or dorm or something like that.
Yep, I ended up one of those.
And in their article ended, our dossier is available to the police. Translation: the police aren't interested. They don't want your dossier. If they were interested in it, they already have it. But nonetheless, it's sold gutter rag newspapers. I mean, they were the same ones who did the Max Mosley thing, where they suborned a pro-dom and got to basically got a video, I think it was, of what Max Mosley was doing, and then started accusing him of being doing Nazi role play and all the rest of it. And fortunately, the whole thing fell apart on them.
And he sued their asses for invading his privacy, and he won.
Yeah.
So good for Max Mosley. You don't have many other faults, but
At least on
he
that
was on
one.
that side of that one. It's actually the possible redemption arc for, of all people, Nigel Farage, is that he threw such a tantrum of having his bank account shut down. He started launching a campaign saying people shouldn't have their bank accounts shut down because the bank disapproves of them, which may be a tremendous advantage to sex workers and porn performers. As I say, that could be one fuck of a redemption arc for Farage.
I mean, this is a major problem for some people in the kink community, is that banks, PayPal, all the rest of it, just turn around and go, no, sorry, can't have an account, closing me down, boom.
I give you money.
And give the money. Yeah, absolutely. The pro-dons I've read, they've got thousands of pounds that they can't get back. So, it's there's good things and bad things happening simultaneously, and I just hope that the good things overtake the bad things before it's completely dead.
I think we should
Yeah.
probably about
2 minutes?
time.
Or 1 minute, if you haven't got any questions.
Any
Yes,
other?
any questions? Anything to say? In which case, thank you all for coming and listening.
Thank you,
Graham.
Interested?
Yeah.
Not bored, at least.
That was good.
Cheers, Graham. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. I'm sorry, I don't know what fuck sound I'm feeling with my neck like.
That's all right.